Welcome on into this week's edition of Got Next with Meghan and Zora. And we have a very special guest as our girl Zora is off doing all the motherhood things. Welcome to Ros. Thank you so much for joining us. Ros does all things basketball in general, women's basketball, played at Stanford, has covered the college basketball, the WNBA, just got done being down in Miami for Unrivaled. So she is locked in. I'm sure unless you've been living under a rock, you have seen her somewhere along the way. So thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, girl, what's up? How are you? I'm so excited to be on. I'm sad I'm missing my girl Zora, but we're going to hold it down for her for sure.
I know. We are going to hold it down, and we have a lot to talk about, speaking of holding it down, because the Final Four has been decided, Ros. We are finally here. What a wild weekend in terms of the Sweet 16, Elite 8. Pretty much all chalk except for UConn sneaking on in there. But let's just dive right into it off the top with the rematch we were all looking forward to, which was this USC-UConn rematch. Earlier in the season, they played right before Christmas on the East Coast. USC was able to run away with the game, slim margin of victory. But this time around, no Juju, unfortunately, losing her to an ACL tear, which is horrible for all women's basketball fans. For Juju, her family were thinking of her, obviously, as she goes into her recovery. But UConn pretty much came out and they looked like they were all business. What was your biggest takeaway from this one?
Well, I was impressed with the play of Sarah Strong and how their freshmen really got them going, and it was really impressive to see Sarah come out 22 points, 17 rebounds, and that's a freshman setting the tone early and answering the challenge from Gino. Like, Gino hit her up during the practice for it. He knew Paige was going to be under duress or getting a lot of attention, and she responded. And I think it's just that level of poise and unafraidness, like the fact that she, is undersized as a forward at 6'2", but she's just so mobile and can play at different ranges and shoot from three and stretch the court. I was really impressed with how she started the game. What about you?
I love Sarah Strong so much. And last year I had the opportunity to do the McDonald's All-American game, and she had yet to decide where she was going yet. And I was like, she is by far the best player on the floor here. And then obviously going to UConn, all the things, she's just taken off from the beginning. She defends, which freshmen don't like to play defense. No one really likes to play defense, Ros, but she has stepped up in that way. So I'm with you on that. I mean, you can't say enough about what Paige Bueckers has done in these last two games. I mean, to be the only UConn player ever to drop 40 in a game, first off, last game, then to turn around, drop 31. She is playing hey, y'all say I've got to be a great to win a title. That's what you guys say I have to do. So let me do it in fashion. And I tell you what, this UConn team might be the scariest team in this tournament headed into the Final Four. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I think UConn looks super hot. They came into the tournament on a 10-game win streak. They're healthy. They haven't even seen the best in the tournament from Azzi Fudd yet. So I feel like heading into the Final Four, they've almost got this X factor of further explosion, explosive players that could take off. But to stay on the Paige Bueckers tip, obviously the points are impressive. But for me, it's how she's getting to the points, the way, the timeliness of it. I have found in this tournament so far, when there has been a moment where the UConn needs to push for momentum or respond to a run or close a quarter or pour it on and pull away, I've seen Paige be really comfortable in stepping up and being the leader of that and understanding the moment and delivering there. And I've also thought her execution, her efficiency has been incredible. She's either going to burn you from three if the defense is hanging back. And if you're running out on her or on her hip, she's going to take you off the bounce, and she doesn't get in too deep. She's really good at finding her spots and gaps, and that mid-range pull-up jumper is just, she's eating them up with it.
Lethal, smooth.
I really am so impressed with her efficiency and not even needing that many dribbles to get to the best shot possible.
I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit, but I'm curious to know your opinion. Does she need to win a title to be considered an all-time great at UConn?
Don't we say the same thing for Caitlin Clark? Then why not Paige Bueckers?
I agree.
So if that's the caveat for Caitlin Clark, then Paige is in the same bucket. So yeah, I'm really hopeful. I think there's so many great stories here, and for UConn, their storyline would be really like a Cinderella, finally under all of the injuries and disappointments that this program has had in the past bunch of years, and also that individually Paige Bueckers has had, there's a Cinderella-like moment here where she can finish with a championship. UConn can get back to the chip since 2016, and realize like the cherry on top of a lot of greatness throughout her career.
Yeah, I retweet you on all the above in terms of that. And what's crazy is to think that the lowest seed in the Final Four is a 2 seed in UConn getting in there. So that just goes to show you where we are in college basketball. UConn is back in the Final Four, not surprising. Also in the Final Four, what a matchup between Texas and TCU.
Yeah.
Battle for the state of Texas. And I tell you what, headed into this game, like watching TCU against Notre Dame earlier and then coming, I was like, dang, like they've really got a chance to make this a game and to maybe knock off Texas and get to the Final Four. But Vic Schaefer's crew is no joke defensively. Maddie Booker to me is like a pro already. And I think she could like translate her game over to the W like yesterday. But for them, Texas, that is, to come out and play the way they did, I was really impressed because this was a low scoring game.
Yeah, a lot of these games have been low scoring. I mean, there's just so many defensive battles. And so like what stood out to me for Texas for sure was the defense. Like that was the first thing. And the defense on the 2 stars for TCU. Hailey Van Lith ended up shooting 3 for 15, 7 turnovers, but it was just she couldn't see, Harmon's defense on her. And then when she was trying to come off the pick and roll, they had just either so much like crowds or hands or length on her, whether it was a hedge or a soft trap, that she had to like retreat. She couldn't turn the corner or find her teammate rolling. So she had a hard time not only getting her own basket, but creating for others. And I thought the defense was really there. And then of course, against Sedona Prince, the defense made it really hard for her. It was really physical. Sedona only took 4 shots. She ended up fouling out. It wasn't the best moment for them, but I mean, overall as a team, we're talking about 2 players. They really stymied. Is that a word? They were stifling.
I can now. Ros, you went to Stanford. Anything that you say is a word you could convince me as, please. You got that. Unlock.
You know what? Don't trust me. I'll be making up words. But I thought Kyla was dope too. The coast to coast from her.
Yeah.
Gold-Acre?
Oh, how did you? I saw a like a slow-mo on Twitter or something earlier today of her doing that. That was insane.
Yeah, she's 6'6" too.
Yeah.
And I think in general, super smooth.
Yeah.
What? All the way to the cup, a little soft touch fillet.
Come on now. Yeah, it was. And in slow motion, it looked real good. I was like, okay.
Yeah. And I think size is something that, between her and Jones, like that's something Texas could lean on as an advantage to take advantage of in this run.
They're such a unique team, Texas is, because of that size and the fact like they don't shoot threes. Like that's not part of their ball game. And in this era of basketball where it's more positionless, we're seeing more threes taken by not just guards, by post players as well, being able to step out. I love that they force you to grind it out in the half court. They're going to pressure you. They're going to get into passing lanes. They're going to force you to like win on the glass. This is a team I think is really dangerous. And that's why I'm excited to see this rematch against South Carolina, because it's going to be a physical battle. And it's, to me, an X factor, if you will, is Taylor Jones for this Texas team, because she's been like somewhat like low key under the radar, doesn't get talked about a lot, but yet you look at her stat lines game after game and she's just so solid. 7 points, but she's got 4 blocks and 6 rebounds, and they're coming in timely situations. And then Kyla Old-Acre off the bench with her 9 points, 5 rebounds, 2 steals. Like you have a group of bigs that can match South Carolina's physicality. And that to me is going to be fascinating when we get into it.
Yeah. Okay. So should I save all my tea for the preview of that matchup or just go right now?
Oh my gosh, go right now. Why do we need to wait? I didn't know you had tea. Let's go.
Okay, so I think, yes, that matchup is going to be crazy because it's a defensive battle, And so when that happens, and to your point, like you're talking about how much pressure they're putting on the ball and forcing you in a half court set, like games like this, possessions matter. So I'm looking at turnovers. I'm looking at rebounds, offensive rebounds, like who can manufacture more, who can hold on to more and make them count. And then defensive rebounds are important too, so that you can get out and create some pace and beat a defense down the court. You don't have to sit there with them in that half court set.
Mm-mm.
And then, hey, I was a point guard in these, tournament situations where the pressure is always up. Pressure releases are so key. And you're going to have to literally practice that so that, like, you retreat dribble, someone's coming up, one of your teammates is coming up, you're shortening the length of passes.
Mm-hmm.
You're beating them back door. You're getting the ball somehow to the heart of the paint and then either penetrating, getting it in there to kick out. Like, there's so much strategy that goes into playing against a team that's making it hard for you defensively.
I love that breakdown. First off, like releasing the pressure. It's so hard to do because so many times we watch throughout this whole entire tournament and it doesn't matter what team it is, but you see that pressure come up and you see people panic. Or how many times, like in a press, do we see players go to the area of the floor you're not supposed to go to and just pick the ball right after half court? Like, what are you doing? So you
Girl,
got to practice.
what position were you? What position
I
were
was a
you?
shooting guard.
Okay.
Yes, I shot a lot of threes, didn't play a lot of defense. And, I was just kind of
What
waiting
a
there.
life! What
Come
a
on.
life you
What a
lived!
life.
How
I tried.
nice!
I tried to keep it simple,
I spent most of my college career fighting for a green light. You're out there just shooting them
Yeah,
up.
you're fighting for your life. I'm on the other side. Hey, Ros, when you get it over, I'm right here.
Okay, so then I'm on the opposite side because
Yes.
I was a defensive player of the year. So like one
Yeah.
of the ways I was on the court with all the stars around me was to
Mhm.
lock up on D.
Right.
So I get the Harmons out there of the world and the
Mhm.
things like that. But another thing that I think about that SC matchup, South Carolina matchup with Texas. So I went and looked at the other 3 times they've seen each other this season and went and looked at the box scores. And, one of the first people you said was Madison Booker.
Mhm.
And in the games that they lost, she's shooting only 21% from the field. So a real key is the defense. And that's what South Carolina is known for. Defense, making it hard on you, low scoring game. And they've managed to find a way to make it disruptive, low shot efficiency on Maddie Booker. So I think
Mhm.
like that's a key. Like, how do
Yeah.
you get her better shots, easier looks, keep her engaged, or use the attention on her to create for others throughout the game?
Yeah. It's a really good point. And when you look at how South Carolina like matches up against Texas, like they do have like some of that length and that ability to make things difficult for Madison Booker, which is going to be interesting. Can they continue to replicate it? And when I look at South Carolina, I mean, you got so much depth. But
Yeah.
what's interesting about them is they don't necessarily like have that go-to huge player that we've seen in the past before.
Yep.
So does that matter when you get to this stage of the tournament? Like, does it matter that you don't necessarily have that consistent, I know I can get the ball to somebody and they're just going to go get me a bucket?
Mm-hmm. Girl, there are 2 wins left. Maybe if we were at like, all right, we're in the midway point of the
Mhm.
season, or you got to get 8 to get the 2 left. And I know everybody is talking about, man, they're squeaking their way to the Final Four. They've been squeaking these wins out. But in March Madness, a win is a win is a win. You win in
Mhm.
advance. You got 2 more wins you need to do this. And it doesn't have to be beautiful or pretty. And to your point, I completely agree. There is not some traditional superstar.
Mhm.
So it's been eking out something of different players each game. Sweet 16, Full Wiley
Mhm.
comes through and just has an incredible second half after being challenged by
Mhm.
Coach Dawn Staley. In the Elite 8, it's Chloe Kitts who shows up at
Mhm.
the end, big free throws, who she admitted she was a little like unsure, maybe nervous, maybe feeling like, are you sure me? And coach empowered her, put her in that spot and gave her a chance to step up. And I just taped my show earlier, so I actually made this point there. I don't want to like do it twice, but I think it's something I believe hard in, is that Dawn has been excellent in this tournament and with a team that doesn't have superstars, of knowing how to uplift, empower, push the right buttons, when, how to talk to each player in a
Mhm.
different way and help put them in positions to step up and shine. I think Dawn has, and we've seen it post game from the players, each of them will talk about what Dawn did in that moment, whether it was Malaysia or whether it was Chloe, to light them up and get
Yeah.
them to step up in that way. So I think when you're 2 wins away and you don't have necessarily the superstar that some other programs do, the coach has to, Dawn understands her role in like helping her team understand the urgency of the moment, one play at a time, one game at a time.
Yeah.
What do
No,
you think?
I love that point. And, something I really appreciate about Coach Staley is that she holds her players accountable. And
Mhm.
in this day and age, I know, and we're going to get into the transfer portal here in a moment, but like there's a lot of players that don't want to be held accountable in that way. And I look at what she's done with Mylasia Fulwiley, who would be a starter on every team in America, by the way, but like has this role coming off a bench, and Coach Staley challenges her,
Mhm.
and they seem to have a really good relationship, and it's that trust that you have in each other. And it's also like Dawn going to press conferences and having her players' backs. Like you are united at all times. And I think it's
Mhm.
really important when you get into this stage of things, but also just in general, when maybe you don't have a team that's, by the way, like they are full of superstars. Like these are all like, like they're
Right, right,
10
right.
and like they're all studs.
Understand.
But like, it's so important that everybody just understands their role and they're okay with that. And I think that's really unique, and it's a scary characteristic to have for a team as you kind of move forward.
It actually kinda makes you harder to scout,
Yeah, right,
or to
exactly.
take down. The fact that, like, one player could be down and the next one will come up. You got a bunch of g players that might be, somewhere around double digits, or that coming off the bench is someone who is that capable in Mylasia Fulwiley,
Mhm.
and has that much speed to completely change the way the game has felt
Yeah.
the whole time. But, it also shows the growth. Like, Coach Staley talked about how if she had challenged her the way she did in that Sweet 16 game last season, she might not have responded like that.
Mhm.
So players are growing within the program and being able to handle the opportunity. And I have seen some questions like, why doesn't Full Wiley start? And there's a lot of strategy that goes into making sure you have the right oomph off the bench, a
Mhm.
nice punch, change up to the game. And some of her characteristics, the fact that, like, when she's in, she can dominate it right away. And maybe
Yeah.
that's not how you need to start the game. And when she is in, she changes the speed of the game and the defensive intensity and the pace and everything. And like that's something that can catch a team off guard. And therefore, sure, she could start. Maybe she'll start another time.
Mhm.
But she also is high impact coming off the bench. And Dawn Staley knows exactly what she's doing.
Oh, yeah, make no mistakes, folks. Dawn Staley knows what she's doing. We have no questions about that at all. I do have a question for you as we
Yes, ma'am.
transition to this next game. UCLA is going to be taking on UConn, but before we get to that matchup in particular, to see UCLA beat LSU to
Yeah.
get there and kind of avenge that loss from the Sweet 16 a year ago, I have feel like I've gone on record. I'm like the biggest Lauren Betts fan, but it's so many people around this team at UCLA that make them so special. Obviously, her on the inside, like you've got to scout for her because you don't see 6'7" every single day.
Mhm.
And her playmaking is what I love most about her. But the way that that team executed against LSU, and you saw so many different, names step up. You talk Gardner off the bench. You have Gabriella Jaquez, who was huge, 18 points from her, knocking down threes in timely
Yeah.
times. What did you make from that game?
Yeah, shout out to all the role players that stepped up, and especially with Betts, out early in the game with foul trouble. That second quarter could have gone any way. That first quarter could have. Instead, they
Mhm.
took over and responded in the second quarter. In games, there are these windows where like momentum shifts happen and gut checks happen, and so. I again came up in the Pac-12, played at Stanford, covered it for many years, and know Coach Close and her program very well. She spends a lot of time discussing and working on mental toughness. I mean, Kiki Rice has a notebook where she writes every single day, I will be in the final four. They talk about poise in the face of chaos. And in this moment, they really seemed prepared for it. So there was some chaos that happened because Lauren Betts is in foul trouble. Well, then you got Jaquez who's hitting, you know, dagger shots,
Mhm.
or that throughout the game she's just hustling. Or shout out to Kiki Rice. I've been where she's at, where she's a guard and her shot wasn't going down, and that can get in your head. Instead, she continued to make impact. I think she had like 8 assists. She kept
Mhm.
getting her teammates involved. Or obviously Gardner's 5 threes. You got to have X factors. The
Right.
scout is in, they're taking something away, and you got to have a game that's outside your usual self. That must happen in March Madness. I also love your girl Lauren Betts, like coming in off of foul
Love my
trouble.
girl Lauren Betts. Yes,
I mean, you claimed her,
I did.
but to come in off of foul trouble and you're cold for the first half of the game, it
Mhm.
could shake up a lot of players, and have a hard time finding rhythm. still came in and like had 6 blocks, 17 points, like making impact. I think she showed a lot of, again, coming back to this theme of mental fortitude for UCLA, and they finally burst through to the Final Four. I'm very happy for Coach Close.
Yeah. So UCLA is taking on UConn in the national semifinal. I mean, looking at this game, and I see how much momentum UConn's playing with coming into
Mm-hmm.
this, right? And like that has something, there's something to be said for that.
Mm-hmm.
But then you look at, the sheer like dominance that UCLA has been able to play with for the most part throughout this season. Like they've beaten South Carolina, right? They have beaten USC in the Big Ten championship tournament game. They've got all these big wins where they have that confidence, but like who has the advantage in a game like this where really all bets are off because it's a clean slate and you're playing for a national semi-title final?
Yeah, between UCLA and UConn.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a number of advantages here. Like, I think size advantage may favor UCLA just because,
Mhm.
like, Lauren Betts is so dominant on both ends of the court and so big. But then, UConn is scrappy and mobile, despite maybe being undersized. Look at Sarah Strong. Like, maybe her mobility could create foul trouble, or her
Mhm.
shooting ability could cause the court to be stretched out. Maybe Lauren Betts comes out on her and it opens up the paint for everyone else. I think the guard advantage is with UConn. I
Yeah,
think one,
I agree.
yeah, you agree, Paige
Mhm.
Bueckers, and then obviously, I mean, if Fudd has a good game, and
Mhm.
look at the game Chen had, she's
Yeah, Ashlyn
opportunistic.
Shade's been good off the bench for them, yeah.
Um, I also have discussed this with friends, and I am in a few basketball group chats. There's also like a mental aspect of this. I'm such a basketball nerd, but
Put on the goggles.
but there is a mental aspect of it in the fact that UCLA has to be careful that they're not just happy to be there. And I know
Great
that
point.
like this is the first Final Four in the history of the program of UCLA women's
Mhm.
basketball. They broke through, and it could be easy to think that this is a successful season no matter what. And it is. But you just got to have some careful reframing of urgency to understand that y'all want to get in there and get greedy. Go get you 2 more wins. You're not happy to be there. This ain't prom. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and then for UConn, I think it's very clear that, like, hey, not only are we trying to get to the chip, the program hasn't been here for years. Paige Bueckers, we want to get her out on a chip. There's a hunger to do this for their leader. And this is 2 years in a row in the Final Four. There's some immediate experience there to know
Mhm.
what this is. It's a business trip. And then to run it back and get it done. So I'm not trying to say UCLA doesn't understand that, but there are, some competitive mental advantages, that happen with that.
Look, I love what you just said. It's not the prom. You got to show up, right? Like this is all business right now here. UConn having that we've been here before mentality just last
Mhm.
year, right? When they played Iowa in the national semifinal and lost. I remember that moving screen call so well
Oh,
at the very end of that game. Sticks out of
wow.
my mind. And so you're so close, right? Like that game went down to the wire. Like you're so close. And then, you lose and you got Paige Bueckers back for one more year. The experience advantage, I think, goes to UConn. But then you look at, to your point, the size advantage on the inside with Lauren Betts. And if she can stay out of foul trouble and if they can put her in really good situations, like defensively, she can rebound and keep UConn to one and done in the half court. If they can make sure they don't turn the ball over, like little things like that. And you find your shooters and you spread the floor. And I think in order for UCLA to beat UConn, Kiki Rice has to have a huge game. Like
Mm,
from a scoring perspective, to me, she's going to be huge for them. In addition to having some of your like Dougalix knocking down shots, like you need to have everybody playing their best basketball. That might be the stupidest thing anyone's ever said, but it goes to show because when you look at some of the box scores throughout this season, like they haven't necessarily always had great games, all starting five, everybody off the bench. Like you got to put together that perfect game. But I love the idea of Kiki Rice having a massive
yeah.
game in the Final Four to get her team to a national title potential opportunity.
Yeah, I agree. And I think she's a drumbeat, right? She's got the ball
Mm-hmm.
starting in her hands. Turnovers is going to be incredibly
Yep.
important, and taking care of the ball, especially for UCLA. What you don't want to see is UConn being opportunistic, running, flying, wind on their back, fast break points, getting it down, kicking it out for threes. Everybody's feeling good because they can do that in a flurry, in a hurry. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so I think you need to be really thoughtful about possessions against a team like like UConn. And just to speak on experience, like I've played in 3 Final Fours. There is a difference of the experience versus being a team who's going to get there for the first time. The stage is big. The lights are bright. You come in, the arena's bigger. It's packed. You get, there's so many like media moments, interviews, you're
Right.
doing like stages from one program to the next. If you're a starter, there's so many like content things you're doing, the gear, the gift bags, your family is in town, the tickets, like the moment is quick. You got one game and it happens fast, but like the pomp and circumstance, I don't actually know what's happening this year in Tampa, but I was at a Tampa Final Four and we got brought in by the boats on the water and we're dressing up, and there's so much that comes with like entering a Final Four that I remember my first one, I got on the court and my first shot, I shot it right over the rim. And I just shot it right over the rim. And yeah, that's how it went. But like, UConn's going to come in there and they're going to understand like, cool. All right, whatever, business trip, and I'm sure UCLA will get to that too. But that experience does help.
No, and to your point, like having to handle all the things outside of basketball because there's so much. And now we're in an era of social media being as prominent as it is, and it all goes hand in hand. So that's going to be fabulous this weekend. Looking forward to it. You're going to be down there, I know, covering it for Westwood One Radio. So people listening on the broadcast, you can hear Ros all over the action. And speaking of action and social media and all the things, we've got to talk about the transfer portal.
Yes.
Because goodness gracious, this is a wild time. Certainly when you and I were in college, this was not, the same. When we were in college, you transferred if, you went to a school and maybe it wasn't going to work out playing wise, or you wanted to get closer to home. There's, certain circumstances in which, okay, if you transfer, you understood you were going to have to sit out a year. And hopefully you found the right fit. And it wasn't necessarily as common. Now, I mean, like you blink and you got another Twitter notification that somebody else is in the transfer portal. Olivia Miles blew my mind somewhat whenever I saw she was going to forego the WNBA draft and enter the transfer portal. What were your initial thoughts when you saw this news drop?
Well, first of all, I am crying laughing because I see that this segment is called "The Portal is Poppin'."
Yes.
Yeah,
literally it is popping.
It is popping. No, but I was really surprised to see it come down my timeline that Olivia Miles is going to, she's projected to be a number 2 draft pick, but more importantly for me, that she was going to leave Notre Dame. So first it immediately made me think about the WNBA draft and how that shakes things up for the teams picking and also the order. And it also made you think that like, hey, teams like LA who decided to give up picks to secure Kelsey Plum, or Chicago Sky who was like, we're going to secure Courtney Vandersloot. Like it's looking good in the light right now because it's a lot more murky what's happening. It also, bridges a bigger discussion of the negotiations happening around the WNBA and the CBA and all the financial implications, including what contracts look like for rookies moving forward. And perhaps if there's no rush, then maybe people are thinking of waiting. There's a lot of great guards in the portal right now. And so, people may be thinking like, could they end up at UConn with Paige Bueckers leaving, or TCU has Hailey Van Lith leaving, and Mark Campbell did a great job there with her in one season. He's got a reputation. He did a great job with Sabrina Ionescu, worked really heavily with her in Oregon with Coach Kelly Graves' staff. And, the last thing I thought about, without any information, just curious, like, is everything okay at Notre Dame, who I am in great support of. And I think, Coach Neil Ivey is one of the best in the game, but they did not have a great finish to the season. And now you got players transferring out. Like, I was just like, okay, what's happening there as well? So that's like kind of like a mashup of my first immediate thoughts. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, it was surprising just because, when I think about Notre Dame and the success they've had over the last couple of years, Olivia Miles comes top of mind in terms of what they've been able to do. And, things are just so different now. And like, to her credit, like, look, she gets her Notre Dame degree and like she gets to go somewhere else and make probably a lot of money and then gets to go into the WNBA draft, the following year. So there's a lot of advantages, and you never know what's going on with somebody personally and what's going on, behind closed doors. But I was shocked just because, the name Olivia Miles and Notre Dame has been so synonymous over the course of the last couple of years. I look at like Tanaya Latson was one that really shocked me as well. She's from the state of Florida. She played at Florida State for the last couple of years. She led the nation in scoring. She was really able to do whatever she wanted with the ball. And for her to go somewhere else too, like these are now just kind of a sign of the times. And it's not necessarily a lot of times, hey, nothing went wrong, right? Like there's nothing
Yeah.
wrong. It just simply was, I want to go get paid. And I'm told I can make, 500, 600, $1 million, so, like somewhere else. So that's the one thing we're going to have to like probably rewire our brains to realize just because players are leaving does not necessarily mean something went down or like they have a bad relationship. It could simply just mean they got more money and they're going to chase the bag. And I get it.
Yeah, that's a good point, because when I first heard about like the transfer portal, I saw it as somewhat empowering in the fact that like, hey, these players, you used to feel like you would be trapped at a program because you were worried about leaving and losing a year of eligibility. Now you can kind of hold a program or a coach accountable, or your own life accountable, if promises that were made to you and your family just aren't actually being held that way. But you're right. Like things can be going well and you can shift. And there's this whole new thing about, with NIL and, the groups on campus that are supporting, money towards you and as a player. And it can be risky, right? Like, there's something to be said about building and growing with the program, and you could there have been some examples of people who went and it wasn't an immediate fit. Like I would point to Hailey Van Lith's journey. I'm so glad that it worked out in a positive way for her to have this great final season with TCU and the Big 12 to dominate, to find the right coach. Again, Mark Campbell did a great job with her. But the year before at LSU, it wasn't quite the right fit. And so by staying the extra year, she knew she had something else to showcase. I do believe that her draft stock has been risen by this. She showcased herself as a winner, as someone who can hit, high skilled, tough buckets. And I think that worked out for her. But I think her path showcases just how finicky this can be from one year to the next. And it doesn't always work out right away.
And certainly there are issues on both sides of it, like the players certainly, like the way the model was beforehand, it did not favor players. And there certainly were changes that needed to be made. The model now does not necessarily favor coaches. And there's probably some changes that could be made to even it out and maybe have the pendulum be more in the middle right now, because it's tough as a coach to have to worry about recruiting your roster throughout the whole entire season. For them to come back. And also, you don't know, there's all sorts of things going on behind closed doors you don't know what's going on with players being shopped around by certain, other entities, whether it be like AAU coaches or whatever. You don't know what's happening, again, behind closed doors.
I think it sucks for coaches.
It stinks for coaches right now too. So there's two sides of it. And I can't help but think there's going to have to be something that happens, whether that's legislature being passed. I don't know what the answer is, to make it a little more in the middle. So both parties have, favorable interest, or they can both kind of come out in a good way. Cause right now, I mean, the players have all the power, and that's just kind of how it is right now in the way this portal is set up.
Yeah. I agree that there needs to be like some regulation around this, because how do you build a program? And also there's potential for players to get used or burned in this portal too. So these are young people who are in highly pivotal moments of their lives and may receive poor guidance or be lied to or let down. And I think this is just really delicate, and we knew it was going to be the Wild West. We are in the thick of it right now.
Literally in the thick of it. And I'm glad you alluded to Hailey Van Lith, who definitely found her way at TCU. And I loved especially what Mark Campbell's offense did. I thought it highlighted Hailey Van Lith's IQ and her ball screen offense and her decision making coming off of screens, which is going to be so important at the next level, because that is so like ball screen offense dominant when you look at the WNBA. And I love what Hailey Van Lith had to say post game, and just provided some great insight into her career and what she's taken away from her time in college basketball.
My journey, it's hilarious, because when I was like a sophomore, I was like, who would ever take their fifth year? Like, so why would anyone want to be in college for 5 years? Well, that's funny, because here I am in college. But it's been certainly a journey, and nothing I expected it was hard. It was a lot of nights of being like, I feel like God has put this thing on my heart to be great, but it's not working out right now. And a lot of times I had to look at myself in the mirror and just be like, what do you want, Hailey? Like, who are you? And I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for the fact that he gave me a hard journey. Because I would not be the woman I am sitting up here without it. And so I really praise God for the struggle and the suffering. I praise him for the nights where, I didn't want to be alive anymore. I praise him for the nights that I was on medication because I couldn't sleep or eat. And it's painful to talk about it, but it's really how beautiful life is. So I'm sitting up here now with women that I love, and a coach that I love, and a team that I love, and we aren't even sad about losing. We're sad that we aren't gonna see each other probably next week. So my journey has been crazy. I'm super grateful for it. Wouldn't have had it any other way.
I just love the perspective that she has and all of the, obstacles she's had to face and go through in order to get to where she is. And Ros, like when you look at the pressure that she had, as you guys can hear my dog very excited when we start talking about Hailey Van Lith in the background. When you look at what she's had to go through, being one of those young people who was known about on social media coming into college, and she's dealt with so much outside pressure and kind of, that class of the Caitlin Clarks and the Paige Bueckers that have really grown. And what she's been able to come away with is huge.
Yes. And, as she said in the press conference, like she's thankful for the struggle. Struggle gives us perspective, and there's different levels of struggle. When you're in college, all you know is what's going on the court. And a lot of these people, you're 18 to 22, 23 years old, and they're living in the light, and that's public praise. That's public hate. That's meme culture. She's been involved in all of it. And there's even other factors that factor in as a female athlete. People are looking at the way you dress. People are wondering who you're dating. Sometimes you're being sexualized, publicly. And I think that's a lot of pressure on a young lady who's just focusing on being the best version of herself. And so she's more recently been very public about her struggles. And I'm proud of her, and I'm thankful that her journey is ending this way in college. And it sounds like she's got the right community of support around her, which is very key.
Yeah. Always key to have support. And Ros, you supported me today and Zora in our Got Next episode. And we really appreciate you being here. It's going to be such a fun weekend of Final Four games. We're going to crown a national champion. Hard to believe it. By this time next week, we will know who won the chip. And most importantly, safe travels to you. Have so much fun in Tampa. Thank you for taking some time to hang out with us today.
Oh, I had a blast with you. Make sure you tell Zora I said what's up, and I'll be in Tampa having fun. Hopefully it's nice and warm and sunny.
Send us all the warmth, please. This will do it for our episode of Got Next with Meghan and Zora. See you next time.